Good morning and welcome to Mosaic. I'm Rabbi Eric Weiss and honored to be your host this morning. In the Jewish community, we are right in the middle of the New Year cycle of the Jewish New Year called Rosh Hashanah and the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. With us this morning to talk about the Jewish New Year is Avi Rose, who is the Executive Director of Jewish Family and Children's Services of the East Bay, and Rabbi Michael Copeland, who is Director of Interfaith Family Bay Area. Welcome, Avi and Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's just jump in and first just talk a little bit about the agencies that you come from, what they do, and then we'll jump in and talk about the Jewish New Year. So, Avi, Jewish Family and Children's Services of the East Bay.
So we deliver human services in Alameda and Contra Costa counties. We've been doing it for a very long time. We do services in the Jewish community and we do services in the broader multicultural general community. We do a lot of work with early childhood mental health. We do a lot of work with older adults. And we do a lot of work with refugees and immigrants.
And your zone of services is what part?
The whole East Bay, Alameda and Contra Costa counties.
Wonderful, wonderful. And Michael, Interfaith Family Bay Area.
Yes, so we're part of a national organization connected to a website, interfaithfamily.com, that offers tons of information for families that are looking for an entry into Jewish life and might not know where to look for it. So I work with families that have different backgrounds that they're coming from. One partner might have a Jewish background, someone else is coming from a different background, religiously, racially, ethnically, in trying to navigate how they're going to make choices in their family. So I work with local folks here in the Bay Area.
So in some ways you're probably very busy at this time of year with the Jewish New Year and how an interfaith family works with that holiday celebration and observance in the area. So we have a beautiful ritual item here on the table. It's called a shofar. It's a ram's horn. We're going to hear you give it a good blow later on in the show. But we're entering into year 5776, according to the Jewish calendar, since creation. And I'm wondering, for you, maybe just talk a little bit about where you come from and the ways that in which you grew up celebrating the New Year, ways it has changed for you, what you kind of see for yourself in that way. Avi.
Sure. So I was raised primarily in a conservative synagogue and was fortunate to be in a community that celebrated with a lot of warmth and a lot of spirit. And I'm fortunate to have that as an adult. I'm an active member of my congregation in the East Bay and feel like it really provides me a context to reflect and to recommit and to celebrate with a community of people who I really love.
Wonderful.
And I grew up in a very active synagogue as well, a Reformed synagogue in Southern California, and loved the high holidays. The high holy days, we actually went to a church nearby because we had so many people that we couldn't fit into our sanctuary, which is pretty typical, and there were grand organs and pipes, and it was just a very majestic feeling kind of a time of year. And I actually sang in the children's choir. I loved the music and grew up pretty close to it, even though I came from a family that was marginally connected and a little bit tentative about Jewish involvement, and I just was drawn to it.
You know, both of you, I think, say something that's kind of interesting when we think about the demographics of at least the Bay Area, where we tend to think about how we can bring people back into the community or where people will feel comfortable, whatever their particular slant is, whether it's LGBT or of a particular race or of a particular culture, of a particular faith system, whether they actually are religious or atheist or agnostic. And yet both of you talked about growing up in a Jewish community where you actually did feel connected to them. So I'm wondering, though so many years ago, sort of what were some of the elements that you reflect on now that actually kept you engaged sort of throughout your growing up years into adulthood?
I mean, I was very connected with our synagogue community. And pretty engaged in the process. I know a lot of kids don't love Hebrew school. I was pretty connected with that and felt somehow a deep connection to it. For most of the people I'm working with, that's not the case, and they might not even have that foot in the door to even know what's going on within the more institutionalized Jewish community. And I recognize now that it was a gift that I had that education, and for a lot of people, they're coming into the Jewish community and might not have much of a background, and there's a lot of assuming that people know what's going on in services, that they might know Hebrew. It's actually a pretty high barrier if you haven't had that background. So as I reflect on where I came from, I hold that and hold that with the families that I meet with, and think about, wow, you're coming from a place where this is very new. How can I lower the barrier for you?
Interesting. And
I think for me, I also was lucky, and I think it is unusual, that I had a very positive experience, somewhat in my synagogue, but also in the community in general. My mother worked in the Jewish community, and so I had a pretty positive affiliation. But in my late teens and early 20s, I certainly had my time of feeling alienated as a political activist at the time, and as a young gay man at the time. I wasn't confident that there was a place for me in the community, and it took me a while to come back and find and create my own place in the community.
fantastic. Avia and Michael, we're going to take a quick break and return in just a moment here to Mosaic to talk more about the Jewish New Year and listen to the sound of the shofar, the ram's horn. Please join us in just a moment when we turn to Mosaic.